has there ever been like coaches that have been like, oh, if you just take some fucking sauce, you're gonna be the next Ronnie Coleman or whoever?
When I was a kid, any and all drugs were drilled in my head like bad, right? And I just adopted that mindset. And being an only child and having actually a pretty good relationship with my parents, that was like the main thing that kind of deterred me from ever really considering it.
Just hop on a cycle, but they haven't trained long enough or even been on a program, or they're not consistent with their meals every single day. And then they get off the cycle and everything just goes away.
If 1 time a week allows you to eventually progress to 2, 3, 4 times a week, then that 1 time a week had its purpose.
All right, guys, episode of Anabolic Activities. We got the man over here, Jimmy House. I look up to this guy. This guy is strong as shit. He does bodybuilding. He does Jiu-Jitsu.
Yep.
Black belt.
Yep.
And he's natty. So, yeah, all opposite of me. And yeah, this guy's just an absolute weapon. So let's get into it.
Awesome.
All right, so tell me a little bit about your knee injury that you had a while ago that you rehabbed yourself and didn't get surgery. I want to know a little bit about that since you just kind of put that out there on social media.
Yeah, absolutely. So the main reason why I came is because Nsima invited me back to talk about my knee injury that I got about 7 months ago. So one of my best friends and training partners, Austin Baker, and I were training for his Nogi Worlds camp. And naturally, anytime I've ever gotten injured in jiu-jitsu is after somebody announces this is the last round of the day.
Yep.
So whenever somebody does that now, I automatically bounce out. That is my calling to go.
That's smart.
But yeah, so we're like last round, last round for sure. And then just normal round, you know, he's a world-class black belt, so obviously very high level. Rounds get pretty intense. He went for an outside trip. He came in a little bit too high, whereas you're supposed to generally go down by the ankle to trip the person. He came into my knee. And when he came into my knee, I'm just going to stand up here. He, being about 270 pounds, came into my knee here this way, which is where my PCL and ACL tore, I believe. My PCL tore fully, and then my ACL tore partially. And then we both landed on the ground in this fashion with his body weight coming down on my knee like that, which is what I believe had 3 partial tears in my MCL as well as a fracture in my femur. Cool. So it was a whole bucket list of injuries that happened all at the same time, kind of. And when it happened, there's a video on my Instagram that you can steal, but screaming like, fuck, god damn it, dude, fuck. Because literally, like, as it happened, I don't necessarily feel like there's a hell of a lot of pain, at least not more than you would think, but it was like a flash of everything that I want to do in my life, just like leaving before my eyes. It was an extreme shock of fear out of nowhere. And so when that happened, I thought for sure, like, oh, that's the one. You know, everyone talks about the knee injury that ends their career. I was like, that's the one. You know, there's no way. I'm like, dude, Austin's a ginormous person. Like, he came in with all this momentum. We both landed at the same. It was like a double whammy. So I thought for sure that I was done. And then he's like, all right, well, let's have you stand up. And I'm like, all right. And I stand up, and he has my hands. And I thought for sure as soon as I put weight on it, it was going to buckle. But he took his hands off, and I'm like, it's not buckling. And then I do one of these, and I'm like able to stand on it. And I thought that was very strange, but I guess that was the first good sign, and I ran with that. My friend drove me home that night, and while the adrenaline was still kicking, I was able to walk up the stairs by myself, which was shocking. And I spent the next day and a half on the bed until I was able to get to the gym on a brace and then started doing my backwards walking. And from there, you know, I had trained a bunch of clients in regards to like rehabbing their knees and stuff like that from the basic knowledge that I obtained from watching Mark Bell's podcast and the different guests that he had on there and Ben Patrick and everything like that. And I just thought, I'm going to do what I do with my clients, regress that to a point that I can actually do, and say, fuck it, if Ben Patrick doesn't need surgery, knees over toes guy, then I don't think I do either. And so obviously I went to the doctors who did the x-rays, so I get the MRI so I can get the specific injuries. But even during the time when I was waiting for the MRI and waiting for the results, my mindset the entire time was I'm going to be able to rehab this myself, because there's enough free knowledge out there, and there's enough examples out there of people that have been able to rehab their injuries on their own. And so when I thought about my injury, I didn't see why I was going to be any different, especially especially because I was able to actually stabilize on the leg immediately after the injury. The two worst knee injuries that I've actually witnessed, one being my best friend, I tore it. Accidentally, obviously. It wasn't, though. No, I'm just kidding. It was an accident. But it was that one, and then another lady at our old gym, the girl landed on her like that. And both times, as soon as they tried to stand up, it buckled and they collapsed right away. So my thought process was, because when I tore my best friend's ACL, I literally took my hand, tried to double leg him, and I just twisted his knee in slightly, and then his ACL blew, his lateral medial meniscus blew. And I'm like, dude, if my friend Austin, who's this just behemoth, launches himself into my knee, how the hell am I supposed to expect to be able to get up from this? So, but I credit that to all the knees over toes and mobility training that I did leading up to that moment, all the Nordic curls that I did and stuff like that. Yeah. And because of that, that was the green light to me that gave me the hope and the confidence I was going to be able to rehab it myself.
Wow. Yeah, that's insane. That says a lot mentally, though. Like, how are you doing? Did you ever dip off, or did you just get straight? It sounds like you just got straight to it.
I got straight to it, and there's a lot of progress at first, as you might imagine. But that's also what I wrote on in regards to what I thought was going to be able to take me through and not need surgery. Because the entire time, it's like, okay, I really think I don't need surgery. And then you hit those points where maybe progress slowed down a little bit, or you can't do something specific you want to do, and you're just like, fuck, do I need surgery? Maybe I do actually need it. Maybe I do need it. And my general opinion on that is that I think there's probably certain injuries that the better option ends up being to get some type of surgical repair. But I do think there are a lot of instances where surgery is recommended, but I don't necessarily think it's always necessary. And I think I ended up maybe just barely scratching through as one of those instances. 3 torn ligaments and a fractured femur. The doctor immediately told me before the MRI even come back that I was going to get surgery. Oh, we'll get you in surgery, we'll get you all repaired and stuff like that. And I was just very, let's just say, blissfully ignorant from the beginning. I'm like, I'm not getting surgery. Good luck with that one, you know? Yeah. And one thing I should probably do is just go back to the doctors in AZ with my MRI report that would be 7 months late at this point, and just be do you think I need surgery, sir? As I do a reverse Nordic or a sissy squat or something. Right. So I think the only thing really left to do at this point is to get maybe an MRI again, just see what injuries are still persisting in the knee. But as far as overall performance goes, I can sprint, I can jump, I can do jiu-jitsu again, specifically with New Wave, which is the best team in the world. And then deadlift, just recently 815, my most recent PR. So the knee is holding up relatively well, considering, So I'm happy with the progress, man.
Yeah, that's insane. That's amazing.
Thank you, man.
That's
I appreciate it.
Sorry to interrupt this podcast, but if you want a big neck like me, strongneck.com and use code Anabolic to save money. You can do it this way, and this way. This is very portable, and you can do it anywhere, like here. Or here. Or right here. So if you want a big, juicy, thick neck like Mike Tyson, Kurt Angle, the legends, go over to strongneck.com, grab a strong neck, and start doing this. There's no excuse. You can do it anywhere, in the kitchen, in the gym, at work, on your lunch break, wherever. And you can wear jeans like me. So you do a lot. You've done bodybuilding, right? Mm-hmm. Right? So I'm a bodybuilder. Yep. I love bodybuilding. I'm not natural, and I'm always open about that. So we took different routes, but I just want to know how you got started in that, and then we'll get into the other stuff.
Yeah, honestly, for me, bodybuilding isn't necessarily a passion, but when I was a teenager and I went through my first actual diet or cut per se, and I started showing some actual definition, a lot of the people at the commercial gym I went to at the time either asked me if I am competing or if I wanted to compete, and I had never really had the thought of doing so until they started asking me. And because powerlifting at the time wasn't nearly what it is now, bodybuilding was kind of the most well-known outlet of competition when it came to the gym. Right. And me being a competitor in wrestling and everything else I did leading up to that point, I was like, okay, well, shit, maybe I can. It was the first time in life I really saw definition. I have a little shithead friend over there who used to make fun of me for being too bulky in high school. He said that I was too bulky and I wasn't going to get girls. So that really resonated with me. And not only did I end up getting more girls than him, but I actually finally got lean for the first time.
I like that. I've seen pictures of you bulk. I've seen pictures of you in your off season when you bulk.
Oh, yeah,
you look like inflated.
It's quite different, yeah.
Yeah, you look inflated. That's insane.
It's because I'm gluten intolerant.
Oh my goodness.
No, it's played. But yeah, no. So they started recommending me that, and then that's when I started kind of diving down a bodybuilding rabbit hole for honestly no more than like a couple years, you know. Okay. And so I did my first bodybuilding show shortly after turning 17. I won the bodybuilding show and became Mr. Teen Arizona, which, I mean, there's only a couple of competitors, but that was the label, so you know that's what we're gonna ride with on IG.
Yeah, it counts.
And, yeah, it counts, bro. And then after that was such a, just bodybuilding is tough, man. And every sport has its own degree of toughness, but like bodybuilding is tough in a sense that you go into it knowing, like guaranteeing suffering for a prolonged period of time. And at the time, I did it specifically to actually benefit me for my senior year of wrestling. I was like, if I do a bodybuilding show going to my senior year, I can guarantee nobody else did that. So then I have that mental edge knowing that I worked harder than everybody else. That was the draw to it for me. Right. Because I also could have just waited until after I graduated high school. But I thought, you know, if I do this like right now in this moment, there's no one else in the state of Arizona that I'm going to go against. I did a bodybuilding show my senior year.
Right.
So that did very well for me. Won my first 40 matches until I got injured the week before state. And, you know, I felt like I really did have a mental edge over the opponents. But I didn't necessarily have that passion for bodybuilding after I graduated until I went through 2.5 years of powerlifting, went from 195 in high school to 270 fat.
270?
Yeah, big boy. Fast food like nearly every day, almost twice a day, and a girlfriend we ate out all the time. Went up to 270, and then I was like, wow, I really don't like being 270 at 5'9", so let's do something to lose weight. And then that's when I walked on the treadmill at an incline, steady pace, just like all my bodybuilding friends did. I'm like, wow, this fucking blows.
Yeah.
So then let's actually do something that makes more sense, and then let's do jiu-jitsu, because I hadn't wrestled in a long time, but I had a few friends that did jiu-jitsu, so basically that's when jiu-jitsu came about, simply because I wanted a more fun weight to lose weight, you know, and make it more applicable to what I did in high school. Wrestling was, I would say, one of my first true loves when it comes to athletics, and jiu-jitsu was the closest cousin to that, and I ended up liking jiu-jitsu much more and doing much more with it. And then after losing 80 pounds, 270 down to 190, and I was like, okay, maybe I can do a bodybuilding show again, because that's when I found out about natural bodybuilding. And, you know, everything's about labels, right? So then when I found out that you can get a pro card in natural bodybuilding, I'm like, okay, that's appealing, because realistically, like, my genetics are pretty good, but I don't think they're good enough to get me an IFBB pro card, natural, you know, at least. And so I was like, okay, well, INBA has it, OCB, different things like that. I think it could do a lot for my business as a coach, and I think it could just do a lot for me in general, saying I reached a quote-unquote pinnacle of natural bodybuilding on my second bodybuilding show. So then I competed in a show in Arizona, got the pro card. I qualified for the Natural Olympia, but I ended up not doing it, just because, like I said, it just didn't. The passion for bodybuilding isn't necessarily there for me.
Yeah.
I would like to do another one, maybe within the year or 2 years or so, just to see how the physique has improved. Mm-hmm. But yeah, bodybuilding wise, I've only done 2 shows. I got my pro card in the second show, and then I haven't competed since.
Okay, so I have a question. What made you? Have you ever been tempted to take anything? I'm sure somebody because for me, I don't have the same amount of. I feel like I was just not guided wrong, but I'm a little bit more like, fuck it. I hate to say it, but I'm just like, you know, I'm gonna do it. I want to be an IFBB pro. That's my dream. So like, I don't know. I feel like, has there ever been like coaches that have been like, oh, if you just take some fucking sauce, you're gonna be the next Ronnie Coleman or whoever? Because that's what happened to me, and then that's kind of how I got into it. But
if by coaches you mean 53-year-old softball players at EOS back home, then yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Hey, bro, you ever thought about trying some? I'm like, yeah, no, I haven't. But
yeah,
I
you
appreciate
probably
the
look better
recommendation.
than all of them too.
No.
So has it ever crossed your mind? Because I've asked Nsima, and he's like, Not really. Like the look maybe like, oh, if I took something, I wonder how I'd look, but not really like sat and thought about like, okay, maybe I'll do this.
So my honest answer is curiosity. Not even from the physique standpoint, more so from the strength standpoint, where
Okay.
you know, you see the various powerlifters that have really blown up over the years, and obviously they're open about their usage. And I think to myself, like, well, if my number is currently here, natural, and they're here, and they're making all this noise and doing all this stuff for their career, the curiosity is there from a standpoint of, I wonder how well I would respond, and you know, how much my lifts would go up, etc.
Yeah.
But it's never gone past curiosity, to be quite honest with you, you know, because it just started, honestly, it just kind of like, it was how I was raised, and it's not even to put into question how you were raised. It's just more so like, when I was a kid, like, any and all drugs were drilled in my head like bad, right? And I just adopted that mindset. And being an only child and having actually a pretty good relationship with my parents, that was like the main thing that kind of deterred me from ever really considering it. And it was actually kind of funny because when I was 16 and doing the first bodybuilding, or 17 doing the bodybuilding prep, I was so blissfully ignorant to how common gear usages in bodybuilding, because I remember one specific case where there was this guy that he had a great physique, but we're under the same nutritionist essentially, and I had come to learn that I don't think the diets were too much different. But I would come in after having 2 wrestling sessions, another cardio session on top of that, and a lifting session. And I'm seeing this guy get shredded and shredded and shredded and shredded, and I'm like making like slow progress, and I'm just like, ow, like, what am I doing wrong? You know, all this stuff. And I later come to find out like how common it is, and just how different it is, you know? And that's fine, and that's expected. I just, at the time, I just didn't know how common it was. But looking at it now, I'm very content and confident in what I've been able to do without it. And I've already kind of established myself by not doing it, and just kind of like showing what can be done without it. And that's where I've kind of appreciated where I've fallen into the fitness industry as far as like developing a niche for myself. And so that's why I've never necessarily like gone any farther past curiosity and actually seriously considered it.
Yeah.
Despite what everybody wants to comment down below, but you know, it's that's generally like what it's been for me, just curiosity more than anything.
Yeah. I heard you talking to my buddy Jake yesterday about like how much you could benefit, how much most people could benefit from just an actual, whether it's a strength program, hypertrophy, like, and just kind of milk all those gains before you even think about touching anything, which I've been training since I was like, 12, and I still feel like, looking back, I'm like, you're probably right. I probably should have, I could have got a lot more out of it. So fast forward to like Jiu-Jitsu and correlate that to strength training, powerlifting. Like, how does that work? Because I'm not in the Jiu-Jitsu world at all, but I see like a couple guys like Giovanni, he's jacked, but he's not like as jacked as you or Nsima, and he's not as strong as you guys. So I'm like, is there like a ceiling, like you were kind of talking about yesterday, where it's like you don't need to necessarily progress any of your lifts for, like, how much is that going to benefit Jiu-Jitsu? How much does it benefit Jiu-Jitsu?
Yeah, so my main advantage is basically having, I'm 27 now, so 22 years of lifting experience under my belt, right? And so through 22 years of lifting experience, you would expect and hope that I'm stronger than the majority of jiu-jitsu people, even if they are on gear, right? And so with that said, a lot of times, I think a lot of it has to do with now where you see some of the top guys in the sport do so well, and they have amazing physiques, and they're very strong in comparison to their competition. Tandem that with the fact that a lot of people haven't done strength training and jiu-jitsu until just recently. And I think the feeling of lack of time, or lost time rather, pushes people to jump into something like that before they necessarily need it. And so, because, like, think about where you're at, and think about from 12 to where you are now, like all the trials and tribulations you've gone through, trial and error, all the different things that you've learned, 10 years to accumulate that. And you could go 10 years from now, look back and be like, wow, I really didn't know what the fuck I was doing. You know, that's how I feel about myself. And it's essentially how I should feel 10 years from now. Like, wow, I really didn't know what the fuck I was doing back then.
Definitely.
And so for a jiu-jitsu guy to want to be the best in the world and then also be very strong in his weight class and then have to learn all the different things that go into actually building strength over a period of time, that's a lot, especially if you don't have a coach that actually knows what they're doing. And I think that's what kind of drives people to take the quote-unquote shortcut, in the sense that they don't necessarily have to go through years and years of proper strength programming or educate themselves on the matter. And what I was talking about yesterday with your friend was just basically, I think the majority of people probably start a little bit sooner than they need to. But the problem with that is that how do you really know when is too soon at the same time too? Because I'll give you from my perspective, where I've been lifting for over 20 years, and then at the same time, I'm 27 now, and that's like generally like an age where people talk about like decline or maybe the very start of it. But I'm still making progress in a bunch of different areas: strength, hypertrophy, athleticism. And so I haven't necessarily felt myself slow down. So like I could start tomorrow on a cycle, and I could make the argument like, I think you started too soon, bro. You didn't even max out your natural potential.
Right.
So for me, I don't even know where that is, and none of us really do. I think, and I'm not even an expert to talk on the matter, but I would say if a jiu-jitsu guy is watching and you're referencing some of the best in the world that openly talk about it, it's not that you'd be in the wrong to consider it, but I would exhaust further your other options that are safer, much more in your control, etc., such as hiring a coach. Like, invest the money that you might spend on something else into a coach, and let's see how far you can go just by a regimented program. Diet, rest, proper supplementation outside of gear, obviously, for the meantime. All those different elements that would essentially help you a lot right off the bat. Going from not lifting at all into jumping on a cycle and then trying to start lifting, like, will you progress? 100% yes. But you add too many variables in at one time, they're not necessary. And then at a certain point, maybe a year or two into it, then it's hard to progress because you threw all your eggs in one basket at the beginning. So really, if you're missing strength training and you want to get stronger, add that single variable in. If you had a bad diet, add that in over time. Bad sleep schedule, boom. And then after all of that, if you feel like I'm just too far behind, then maybe it's time to talk to an expert and consider taking that next step.
Yeah, because you've helped program and coach that are enhanced for sure. Like they'll do exactly that. They'll just hop on a cycle, but they haven't trained long enough or even been on a program, or they're not consistent with their meals every single day. And then they get off the cycle and everything just goes away. I'm like, well, that's not really what's that shouldn't happen if the sleep, the nutrition, and everything else is on point, the training, like that shouldn't happen. So like I see that even with people that are like trying to take a bunch of shit. I'm just like, the same rules apply to natty, not natty. I just think it's a little bit of an advantage. But going to the jiu-jitsu thing, this might be a selfish question, but I've been super interested in trying to mix in some jiu-jitsu or just get started. Sweet. I saw Andrew did his first comp, and I was like, that looks fucking sick. So I've been like up and down with it the whole last 2 months, but I'm like, what would be the first step? Like, I'm bodybuilding, so I'm not doing like strength movements really. I'm just doing hypertrophy. I'm eating. I'm in an off season, my first like real off season right now. So I talked to Mark about it. He's not in it. So I'm like, what would you recommend basically to somebody starting, but my main thing is bodybuilding. So I'm like, I'm trying to figure out where I could toss it in. Because when I talk to you, Jake, and Nsima, Andrew, they're like, oh, we do this like X amount of times a week, if not every day. I'm like, okay, but I don't think I'd be able to do it every single day. So would it be on an off day? How taxing is it? Like, what do I need to look out for? So how would you set that up? If you were coaching me, like, how would you set that up, I guess? Just like, if you can even explain that.
Yeah, exactly. So think of jiu-jitsu, it's a training modality at the end of the day. So whether you're a bodybuilder that does bodybuilding training and you add in something as simple as walking outside with your dog, you might, after day one of that, feel like, oh damn, my legs are kind of tired. Like, there's some after effects. After a week of walking your dog every single day, you may not feel that after your body adjusts. Jiu-Jitsu, a little bit more extreme, but you can approach it in the same way, in the sense that, like, if you took your general bodybuilding routine and you looked at it and you're like, okay, well, I'm taking days A and B off, or on this day and this day, it's a little bit lighter training, so it's not as taxing on my body already, so I might be able to fit in a jiu-jitsu session. With that said, most gyms will have levels of jiu-jitsu sessions. Like, I would say most gyms have some sort of beginner's class that's probably the least taxing, some sort of like all levels class that's probably a little bit harder but nothing crazy, and then a lot of gyms will have some type of competition class, which is going to be obviously most intense. And so just like you would progress yourself in bodybuilding or powerlifting or anything else, you can take those same progressions in jiu-jitsu. You start with a beginner's class a week, builds to 2. Maybe after 2 beginners classes, you go 2 beginners classes and a regular class.
Okay.
And that answer can only be specified to the individual in accordance to your schedule, to your body's work capacity, as it builds up over time, all these different things. So that's where it's also kind of important to have somebody that's experienced and knowledgeable to be like, okay, well, if you're feeling this good after 2 sessions, if you want, you could probably add another one in, that type of thing. If you feel like you're having diminishing returns from the matter, then it's a matter of, okay, where can we regress either in our bodybuilding intensity or the jiu-jitsu intensity to make them mesh out a little bit more evenly. So, and my biggest advice to most beginners, and most beginners aren't coming from a high-level bodybuilding background, but what I say is that most people, when they start jiu-jitsu, they try to go like gung-ho from the very beginning. And I can't tell you how many times in my coaching experience, about 4 years, where I've seen somebody come in and they're super consistent right off the bat, and they make a lot of progress and they seem to enjoy it, but somewhere between month 1 and 2, they just completely fall off, and I rarely ever see them again. Or maybe I'll see them in like 5 or 6 months.
Yeah.
And so that's like the thing that you want to avoid. And for each individual, obviously has their specific reasons, but I would say in most cases, somebody that is not conditioned to grappling goes in, maybe they really enjoy it, but they go too hard, they incur some type of injury, or life happens and they lose motivation, or whatever the case may be, probably just because they gave themselves too much from the get-go. So with you, because you're so passionate about bodybuilding, that's your number one goal, that's your priority, you can add something in like jiu-jitsu as a hobby and keep it at a hobbyist frequency, still enjoy it, still benefit, learn a new skill, but also not have a detriment to your main priority.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you. So that's pretty simple. Just basic progression.
Yeah, basic progressions.
Yeah. Okay. Because I was like, everybody I talked to, I'm like, all right, I guess I got it. It's kind of I got to do it. I can't just do it 1 day a week. That's not really going to do much. But now that you said that, I mean, it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I mean, I think
easier than I thought.
A lot of times I get in this mindset too, like, oh, if I'm only doing something once a week, like, what is it really worth it? Probably more worth it than not doing it at all, at the very least. Like, you can make that argument. So if 1 time a week allows you to eventually progress to 2, 3, 4 times a week, then that 1 time a week had its purpose. Yeah. Where even in my knee rehab, I found myself at points where like I would get lazy on a certain rehab movement, or I just wouldn't do it for a couple weeks because the 1 time a week that I had to do, I'm like, well, if I can't do this 3 times a week, then is it even worth it? Yeah, and then going back to advise myself now, it's like, well, probably, because I mean, even if you're doing 1 time a week, that's still 1 more time that you would have done it had you not done it at all. So it's the same for jiu-jitsu, and it's the same for everything else. I think life in general is all about proper progressions, or regressions for that matter. If you need to regress to progress, then that's obviously a great way to go about just making yourself better in life. Same applies for bodybuilding or jiu-jitsu. And I think each individual thing, bodybuilding, powerlifting, jiu-jitsu, has their ways to progress if you like really take the time to just think about it. But it's not even that taking the time to think about it is difficult. It's just very basic. You just apply principles and concepts, and it's the same thing for bodybuilding, and jiu-jitsu. It's all the same at the end of the day.
Okay. So every time I see somebody that's as jacked as you, I ask them, what do you eat? Because talk to Nsima eats 1 meal a day, a big ass meal. And then I talked to like Stan Efferding a couple times, and his advice to me was like, the meal, getting your meals in is absolutely everything. So I'm like, I want to ask you, what do you eat? What does a full day of eating look like for you?
Okay, so here's my opinion on that. Is I am going on a limb to say that I bet every single jack person on earth has probably never eaten the same their entire life. Like how I ate when I was 15 putting on muscle is different than I ate when I was 20 getting up to 270 versus different than how I eat now trying to like maintain a lean body mass right under 200, right?
Yeah.
So it's like you could switch between dieting strategies and come to find one that you like or come to find one that you like in that current point in time. But that's where like the dieting process is just accumulative over the years, because it's like I ate like shit when I was a teenager for the most part, but obviously I put on a fair amount of muscle doing that, so that added. And then, you know, I cleaned up my diet a little bit junior and senior year when I got really into bodybuilding, so that added a little bit. And then when I started powerlifting, I ate like a fucking jackass for 2.5 years and I gained 70 pounds.
Yeah.
But I probably added at least like 2 pounds of muscle during that 68-pound fat increase. And after losing it, you know, cleaned up my diet a little bit more. I went through my phases of getting to like 250 and down and 240 and then down. Didn't have the cleanest diet during that time either. Like maybe it'd be like 3 to 6 months out of the year where I would eat well and then fall off again. Now my answer to your question would be like the majority of what I eat is like red meat, so ground beef, and I switch between quinoa, white rice, sweet potatoes, etc., like eggs. I more recently switched to somewhat of a gluten-free diet in the sense that I found that gluten in general makes me react a lot, and I hold a lot of water. I get really inflamed, like more than your average person. So I've tried to eliminate that just for overall how I feel and how I look. But to answer your question, majority what I do now is like red meat, and I feel pretty good on it, and I feel like my strength and everything feels good. But this body of work, even including my 15-inch calves, has been just a mixture of lifting for 22 years and eating Jack in the Box and Hot Pockets and some healthy meal prep from time to time.
Yeah, no, I relate to that, because when I was bulking, I was eating, like I told you yesterday, watching those CT Fletcher videos, I was eating everything. Like,
Right.
it was disgusting. And then senior year, got into bodybuilding like you and got shredded. And then from there, I was just like, all right. I still fell off here and there, but then I got a coach, and now I'm like, all right, now I'm good. Joe Sullivan
That's awesome.
is my nutrition coach, so he's taught me a lot of things already. So, yeah. But what's the focus? Is it all in jiu-jitsu right now? Is that the main goal?
No, I've always been a person that has typically a lot of different goals, just because I like to consider myself relatively versatile. And so between jiu-jitsu and a hobbyist kind of thing in bodybuilding, whatever you want to call it, powerlifting, and then my new aspirations in professional wrestling, as well as just being an entrepreneur and a coach and everything like that, jiu-jitsu is, if I was being quite honest with you, is the thing that I'm the most passionate about, because it's the thing that I think is the most challenging, especially being on New Wave now, being with the best guys in the world. You start to realize how much you don't know, and there's something about that like makes me want to just be better, so I don't have as much of a gap. But at the same time too, I also think that just completely stopping powerlifting when, you know, I just broke the 800 mark for deadlift, or stopping bodybuilding when I'm still seeing progressions in my physique, and stopping pro wrestling when, you know, I feel like in a lot of ways, and maybe it can be a different podcast, but that's part of my calling. I think that would be just kind of silly just to give up on different things that I think I have potential in, just to see one through. Right. And I get asked this all the time. It's like, well, do you think that you could do even better if you made X, Y, and Z your full-time thing? Probably. Statistically, I probably could, yeah. But at the same time, I'm not sure how I would feel knowing that I'm at a prime point in my life where strength, athleticism, cognitive function is at a all-time high, and I just limit myself to one or two things.
Yeah.
And in my past, too, whenever I have done like one or two things, high school when you do a sport all year round, or when I just did powerlifting, or whatever the case may be, I found that I just get tired of it. I burn out within a couple years typically. But ever since I started doing all these different things, one kind of complements the other, and it also lets me kind of de-stress from the other, which in my regard, I think it has allowed me to progress in all of them consistently, because I've found a way to not stop.
Yeah, no, that's refreshing for sure, because talking to Nsima for the last 2-3 years I've known him, talking to you, well, you guys both are rare, I feel like, in the fitness industry, because I don't see too many people doing all the stuff you guys do.
Thanks, man.
But I feel the same way. I love bodybuilding, but like I've talked to Mark multiple times, different podcasts. Like I want to progress my vertical. I want to be able to move side to side, jump, sprint. Like I do not want to be just like, I want to be functional. I don't want to just build a bunch of muscle just to step on a stage and flex for like 13 seconds or whatever it is. Like, so to me, that's huge. Just being able to pick your brain and Nsima's, like even my boss, Casey, he's natty. He's like in his 50s, he does boxing, he lifts,
that's awesome.
he runs, he does all this different type of stuff. So
that's awesome,
it's definitely impressive. So I definitely look up to you guys in that sense.
Thanks,
for
man.
sure.
I appreciate it. Look up to you too.
Yeah.
He's a goat, dude. Look at him.
All right, that's it for today's episode of Anabolic Activities. We got the legend Jimmy House here. He gave me a nice shirt. Go to House Strong and go grab you one. Follow us on Anabolic Activities on Instagram and on YouTube. Drop a comment, leave a like, let us know what you think. And for you?
For me, you guys can follow me on Instagram at jhouse182, TikTok Jimmy_house, and then YouTube at Jimmy House. Thanks, guys.
Make sure you go check out the last video we just put up. It's gonna be right here. Click that, it's gonna be right there. Let us know what you guys think. Drop a like, drop a comment. Catch you guys later.